Everybody started thinking about um, what you're going to build your portfolios with. That's going to be important for tonight. So,
I was just going based on what you guys had posted in Discord, just talking about it. And I personally was hoping to maybe stick with the React Rails combo myself. Just be kind of parallel with what I'm, doing with school, plus what I'm already kind of know.
Right.
Think I know.
Yeah, I've got info for Node, Python, and Rails. 'Cause I figured that would cover the gamut of what most folks would choose. And honestly, if you want to have a server side component to it, if you just want to have a single like HTML page, we can roll with that too.
What would be the benefit of having server side when it comes to a portfolio page? Like what I guess what would be the difference in doing the extra work for have a back end for a portfolio page, or why would you need back end for a portfolio page? Sorry.
Yeah, there's a couple. So one would be if any of the things that you're demoing, if you're self-hosting them off your portfolio, like projects and stuff, and you upload them directly to your portfolio, and they have back-end components or just server-side apps that you want to demo, that's going to play a part in it. Two, just for your own experience, if folks just want to have that, setting up a full Rails app and running it, and building, the front end, it's not required for a portfolio. Like you could theoretically build the entire portfolio as an SPA or just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and link out to projects, like to your GitHub or to them hosted somewhere else, and that would be fine too. So it's kind of an open book. I tend to like to see like portfolios are an opportunity to for it also to be a portfolio item. So we kind of touched on this last week. That if, one way you could look at this is to say like, hey, I'm going to put some time and polish this thing up, so that when people get a sense of what I can do, they're also getting a sense of it just from looking at my portfolio, not necessarily the things in my portfolio.
Kind of like the opposite of the spectrum of here's my portfolio page I made on WordPress versus here's my portfolio page that's actually a good project itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So, but we also talked about last week that like if you don't and you just want to go find like a template online and put it together, just because maybe design isn't your specialty and most of your projects are going to be back end facing, then sure, you want it to look nice, but maybe that's not where you put 100% of your efforts is in the front end, and you figure out a good theme or template or whatever design to go with, and then we focus on getting the projects in there. So that's where it's kind of open for folks to kind of choose your own adventure. But tonight, so we kind of left off last week with just kind of going over what is the portfolio, do you need it, what type of things should you put on it, and answering some questions around that. And we talked about Heroku. So there are other places that you can deploy to. We talked about that. Hopefully, everybody's been able to set up a Heroku account. If not, then while I'm talking, go do that. It's pretty simple. Heroku.com, and just it's going to sign me in again. But you can log in and sign up. It's free. And that's one of the reasons why we're going with Heroku. I was looking at all of the modern hosting providers that one could use for this, and as far as not having to pay anything and still get something that is usable, Heroku still kind of stood the test of time. And the benefit here, as opposed to some of the other ones, is you have the option to add a database. You have the option to do server side in multiple languages. The other cool thing, so I think George had asked about this last week, about the domains. I did confirm that you can also route a custom domain name. I have a subdomain off of the Uncensored Tech website, but you could buy your own domain name. That's, you have to pay for that, but like $10 a year or whatever, and point it to your Heroku, and that's also free. The only thing I had to do there was I had to put a credit card on file to verify my account, but everything in this Heroku account is still on the free tier. So I'm still like paying $0 a month, even though I'm hosting the site. So that's kind of, and also I think a lot of the boot camps and some of the folks are already going to be moving into deploying their stuff on Heroku. So I think it just kind of checked all the boxes in that aspect. And then tonight, so we kind of, like I said, left off last week, but just kind of, this is Heroku, this is what it is, get an account set up there. Tonight we're going to talk about, and feel free to follow along. In fact, it would probably be beneficial if you follow along so we can work through any bugs that anybody might have. I know George and Chip, when he gets here, have also already set up Heroku. And I think even done a deploy, so they're going to be familiar with this process and can probably help out anybody that has questions as well, and can chime in on their experience with it. But yeah, follow along if you haven't done so already. I'm going to kind of talk about it, and yeah, hopefully by the end of this, if you have your stuff installed and haven't done a deploy, you can do your first Hello World deploy with your framework. So I think this is, what was the last deploy? I think it was the Python. So this is running on Flat, but we'll get into that. So the agenda for tonight. Step 1, download the Heroku CLI. So I will copy this and throw it in chat. So if you haven't done so, how can I never find chat? Done so already. There's the Heroku CLI. Open this up. If you're running, like, it's for every operating system. So I'm on Windows, I have the Windows installer. If you're running Mac, you can install it with that command. Again, if anybody has any problems, you can share your screen and we can take a look at it. But I've already done this part. When you have it installed, you should be able to run like the version. I think that'll work. Yeah, so I've got 741. If you just run Heroku, you'll get a list of all the commands that can be run. So is there anyone here that is currently installing? Just so I'm aware. Like if you're currently installing, say, hey, I'm going to try and install it right now. Just so we're aware.
Yeah, I'm installing.
Okay, cool. So while Ruthie's doing that, we can talk about sort of how Heroku works if you're not familiar with it. So what it's going to do, it's going to give you the CLI, this Heroku command, and what we're going to do is we're going to run, we're going to create a directory. Where did I? Let's see if I can find where I had my test one. We should have found this earlier. Yeah, it's right there. Okay. So if I bounce out of this and we'll just create a new directory. Everybody can see that, right? If you can't see something or want it bigger, yell at me. We'll create a new directory and call it, I don't know, let's call it TU Portfolio 2. I go in there. that's the first thing you want to do. So if you're still installing or are going to hold off on installing the Heroku CLI until you rewatch this video or later, I'd say go ahead and create a directory for your, or if you haven't already created a directory for your portfolio to build that project in. If you have and you have already committed it to Git, then you can kind of skip this step, and I'll let you know when we'll pick up. So this is if you don't have any files yet for your portfolio started. You're going to want to create a directory for your portfolio. We're going to Git init, so you should be familiar with this. This is just going to give you a new Git repository. Again, if you already have your files committed somewhere, you don't need to do this. And then Heroku has a command, Heroku git :remote. You'll see again, if I just run the Heroku command, they've got a bunch of stuff here. Like here's the git command, and then they do this weird colon thing, and you can get other commands out of it. And then we'll add, and actually, I think I skipped a step. You're gonna have to log in. So Heroku login is gonna be the first thing you want to run. This will just walk you through getting a token. I think it gives you a, in fact, if I go here, yeah, so it will launch your browser and ask you for the token, and you just log in, and that's it. So, Ruthie, if you get that far and have questions, let me know. But yeah, you'll run Heroku login, it'll open your browser, you'll get a token, you'll paste it in, and then you can do this. Git remote, add, and then this is going to be the project name, portfolio. So another command you could run is Heroku apps, and it'll show you all the apps that you've created in your Heroku account. So again, if I wanted to initialize a new Git repo for my project, I could do git remote add to the name of my app. And tells me that it's added it. So under the covers, if we do git remote v, all this did is added two remotes, like one for fetching, one for pushing. If you've ever done git remote add, like origin, and then pasted in the git thing, that's all it did. So if you already, so let me switch back to, I can do it here. If you already do git remote, if you already have a remote set up, say you had a directory and you're building out your portfolio and you already committed this to Git, which I would recommend you doing, that should probably work because it's going to add this Heroku. But if you do git remote, you'll end up with 4. Or you could do git remote add Heroku, and then something like this, and that would do the same thing. So that's kind of the two ways you can go about it, depending on if you already have a Git repo initialized or not. Any questions on that? Ruthie, how are you doing with the install?
Installing. My computer's slow. It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, I remember when I was installing Heroku, it took a while. But hey, Paul, just to make sure, so I have the Git initialized on my directory. Did we go ahead and add the remote to it? Or is that something that we first create in Heroku, like, create a new app on Heroku, and then once we get that URL, add the remote to our local Git?
Yeah, so have you pushed yours to Heroku yet? Or did you?
I have not. The only one I have on Heroku, like I started fresh for the portfolio page, so
Okay.
It's all on my computer for now.
Okay. Yeah, so you can, if you already have your Git initialized in that portfolio directory, you can run the, gosh, where did it go? No. The Heroku get remote tac A, and then the name of your app, your Heroku app.
Okay.
And it will add the difference that you're going to see that you're not going to see here is if you ran, you can run this before or after you do that. Get remote tag V. This is going to list all your remotes. So what you'll probably see is like origin and then your GitHub here. And then as soon as you run the other command, you'll see 4 here. You'll see 2 origins and 2 Herokus, each for one fetch and 1 push each. And you can do that anytime. Like you can go in to that directory right now. If you run this, you'll see your origins. If you run the Heroku command, you'll get 4, and then the project name. It'll look something here if I, let's do a new, it's called TU Portfolio, sample portfolio. I'll just demo it since we're, all right, so like have this. We could do get remote add origin and then paste that. And if I do get remote V, I've got 4 here. So this is what you guys are probably going to end up something looking like this. Once you've added your GitHub remote and then you run the Heroku command, you're going to end up with something like this. And this is probably the first time you're going to have 2 remotes. And we'll talk about when we get to pushing how you pick which one you want to send your commits to. Because you'll have to basically, your GitHub, like you can push your commits to there just as you regularly would. But then when you push to Heroku, that's kind of like doing a deploy. So you know, unless you want to deploy on every single commit you make, probably not. You probably want to like work on a bunch of stuff, maybe over a week, and then deploy, you know, when you have something together. So then you'd push to this one. So you're not going to be, you could, but you theoretically probably won't be pushing to both of them at the same time. Cool. So hopefully that will get the Heroku CLI installed and get your remote set up. The next step is really just getting your app stood up. So getting some files into this directory. And that's going to depend on what type of app you want to run. So if you're, you know, want to use Node, you can do an npm init and start bringing in your packages and building your site out that way. Maybe bring in Express for the server. If you want to use Python, you could initialize Python, pip install Flask or Django, and get the boilerplate for that. If you want to use Rails, you could do Rails new and create a new Rails app. At this point, like this directory is, you know, your application. I don't have that here. Apparently that doesn't work in PowerShell either. Yeah, so as far as getting Heroku set up, that's like the first half. And if you get that, then you can basically move into your local development, building out the thing as you normally would. The latter half, which is what we're going to move into now, entirely depends on what you choose to build your site with. So the 3 examples that I have are Node, Ruby, and Python. Heroku uses, in some cases, again, this isn't for like all cases, but in some cases, uses this thing called a proc file. And what it does is when you deploy your app to Heroku, it's going to try and figure out what type of app you're running. Sometimes it can figure it out and knows how to start the server and can run your app no problem. Less frequently, and if you want to be sure that Heroku knows how to run your app, you're going to tell it, and you're going to tell it how to run your app using this proc file. So I have 3 different examples based on what you choose. So if you have something in mind, you can copy this down. What you're essentially going to do is inside your directory, you'll make a file called proc file with a capital P. Touch there either. How do you create a file in PowerShell? I don't know. All right. So you'll create a file called proc file. And then in this proc file, which is what Heroku is going to read, you'll put one of these 3. So it'll basically be like if I was running a node, it's going to look like web npm start. That's probably what you're going to use to start your server. You'd also, in that case, need a package JSON and have the start in the scripts. And then node, you also have to set the environment for it. So I guess this is really going to depend on what people are using. So if you have something in mind and want me to go into it, I can. Rails, your proc file is just going to have this web in it. You don't have to do anything special. It can figure it out. It's just going to start Puma, listen on the correct port. Instead of running in development, you may want to change that to production. It's up to you. And then Python Flask, again, like this web : G-Unicorn app. As long as you name your application like app.py, whatever. I mean, this would be the same command that you'd run locally to start that server. And then Python requires you have to save your dependencies out to your requirements. And it does require the proc file. So that's it for that. So I think I still have, let's jump back to.
I have a question, Paul. I just remember that when I was doing this, I had to install G-Unicorn. I'm not sure if that's for everything or in my case, because I'm using Flask.
Yeah.
Is that something that like I have to do for Heroku, or is that something that for a lot of deployments, G-Unicorn is used for?
It's only because you're running a Python app.
Okay.
So G-Unicorn is going to be the web server that actually runs your app. So what Heroku is actually doing is, I can pick it up canvas. But don't have my pen attached, so this is going to be a terrible drawing. But what you can think of it as is there is like a server. So this box is Heroku. This is the public internet out here. And this box is your app. And maybe you've got a database. And there's another box around your app called a dyno. Y-N-O. There's also a box around things like DBs, and these are also dynos. And so the public, somebody wants to visit your application, they go on the internet and they hit Heroku, which turns around and is listening to your app on some port. Like, I don't know, this could be like port 8017. Who knows? Like, we don't care. What Heroku is going to do is they're going to start your app on some machine. Dynos is just a machine, a server somewhere. We don't care where it is. So Heroku is going to start your app on some machine somewhere called a dyno. It's going to start the web server in your app on some port that we don't care about, but it knows. And then it's going to have its server listen to your app so that when the public traffic hits, like, you know, my portfolio.com, which is really, you know, hitting up port 80 by default over HTTP. That's if you're using HTTP. That's where it's hitting this server, and it knows, like, oh, myportfolio.com, that goes to this app. So it behind the scenes directs it to here. So that's what's going on. In your case, GUnicorn is the server that your app is, the server that's running, like, here in front of your app, and you're telling, supposed to go back to here, you would have to, or my notes, let's do it by default. It's going to pick a port to listen on, and this Heroku server is going to pick up on that, and then that's what kind of exposes it to the public. Same thing if you're running Node. This would be like Express listening to your app. It's going to forward its response to the server, which goes to the public. Or Rails, like your Puma server, and Rails is going to be listening in this, like, area here to your app and listening to traffic being forwarded from Heroku to it. So when you're in your, like, localhost, local development, you're really, you can't see that. You're really working just with this, and that dyno is essentially like your computer, theoretically, if you want to think about it like that. So when you start it, you'd start that server and you just listen to the app locally. But when you upload it to Heroku, that's sort of what's going on behind the scenes. Hopefully that's helpful. If it's not, just forget the last 3 minutes. Does that make sense? Any questions there? Any questions from anybody following along or trying to put together this proc file and doesn't know what to put in it based on whether they're using Node, Ruby, or Python?
So the other companies like Heroku that will host your site, do they also use a proc file, or is that only something that Heroku uses?
They're not always called proc file, but they almost always have something similar to it. If they're operating like Heroku does. If you're, again, like AWS, they're going to have, if you're using Beanstalk or if you're using Google App Engine and deploying apps to those environments, they work similar. So those would be the Heroku-esque equivalents in those cloud environments. They have their own configuration. I think they're either YAML or JSON files that you would use to configure your app. But it would be something similar to this. At least the purpose would be serving a similar purpose and telling either AWS or Google App Engine how to configure and run your app and expose it to the world. But it's not going to be called a proc file. That's the big difference. Cool. Well, the last piece then, so you've got your prog file set up. You have some files, so I've just got an app here called Hello World. This is what's currently deployed. So if we look at Heroku right now, it has this deploy tab, and well, where I actually want activity, not deploy. And it'll list like all your deploys, whether they deployed successfully or if they had problems or whatnot. The deploy tab will tell you, like, you download all your stuff, connect it directly to GitHub, do all sorts of other fun stuff. The resources or overview, this will probably be empty until you push your proc file. So once you push your proc file, you should see something show up here, or if you go to resources up here, that's just kind of the gut check, or the, hey, Heroku can read my file and it understands like what it's supposed to be running. If you make a proc file and you push it and you're not seeing this, then there's something wrong with your proc file. So let's make a change. So this is the site. We're running hello_world. Let's say, hey, people on Zoom, how is it going? And I'll save that. Again, if I do git remote v, so this just has Heroku. Let's switch back to my other one. If I do git status, all right. So I've modified my app.py. That makes sense. So I'm gonna add that, and then we're gonna commit that change. Say live coding update. Boy, I hope this works. All right, we'll commit that. And again, show us one behind. So this is set up to track my Heroku. If you are in that situation where you have both you do get remote, look at your remotes, and you have Heroku and an origin. What you're probably going to want to do is, like, you've probably done git push set upstream origin, and then like the name of your branch, whatever it is, something similar to that. You're going to want to do that. You're going to not want to do Heroku. You can, and then when you first push to Heroku, if you haven't set your upstream branch, it's going to prompt you to do something like that. The reason you wouldn't want to do that is just because it's going to set the default remote. And again, like I said earlier, you're probably going to want to push the majority of your changes to GitHub first. But in Heroku, you're only going to want to push to when you want to deploy, if that makes sense. And how you would do that is say git push and then tell it the remote you want to push to. So git push Heroku in this case will push me to Heroku. What we'll see here is Heroku, so you get more output than what you do if you just do a git push, because we're getting this output that's saying, oh, Heroku is going to build my project. So it's detected a Python app because that's what I have in my proc file here. And we can change that in a second. We'll see how it changes. But yeah, so it's going to install and do all the things it needs to do. This can also be seen if you were to go back to the activity. So we see, oh, here's something. If I go to activity just now, I've deployed. And if something did go wrong in your build, you'll see an error in here. Say, I don't know, you threw an error and your app couldn't start for some reason. You'll see the error in here. So that's been deployed. So if I go and refresh this, now I've got my changes live. just take a look at, let's say I make a bug. All right, so hey Chip. Oops, I made a bug. And we'll push this up. And we go here, we'll see like, oh, Heroku's picked it up, it's building. We can go view the build process. Deployed. Now, the other thing here is, if you haven't set up a custom domain, I'll note that it'll tell you where it deployed it. It's always going to be the name of your app.herokuapp.com. So you can also go there and visit. But now, so you'll see it completed successfully, but we should, if I go and refresh this, maybe. Oh, that's probably still going to run because that's not necessarily a bug. We need a different bug. We need that's just going to run automatically. I tried to think of problems I can introduce on the fly. Let's here. That should be in there, Python. Yep, so that deployed. Go back here. This is going to be successful, but what we're going to get when we try and visit our application is won't. So in this case, like, there was nothing wrong with the build process. It was able to build the app, but this is technically a runtime error, and because there isn't much of a build process that I have going on right now, it's just installing the dependencies and going from there. But when we try and run it, we have an application error. So it gives you the command here, and this is really helpful. So what you're going to do is you're going to run this back in your terminal using the Heroku CLI, and this is going to have me pick an app, I think. I don't know if to do it. So what it says here is like, hey, I see my state changed from starting to crashed, app crashed, yada, yada, yada. This is where you're going to get your stack trace. That's the point here. So we see, hey, it's trying to start the server, Ginacorn, run the app, started listening, booting, blah, 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 and then exception in worker process, file, yada, yada, yada. You get all the fun stack trace of a dump that, hey, something went awry. Down here, app.py, line 6, return. We got the little caret telling me, hey, indentation error, expected indented block. So all of that nonsense to basically say, sometimes the builds, especially if you don't have a long build process and the app can actually like be deployed, this is going to succeed. But when you look at your app and if you get a screen like this, go check, do exactly what it says, go check the logs, comb through here. It may not be as nice as you're used to just getting it locally, but it is helpful. It will give you the stack trace and tell you like, hey, what went wrong. You just have to kind of look for it, and that should give you enough information, hopefully, to come back and go, oh, yep, I'm a dummy. That needs to be indented, and say, all right, we're going to fix the bug and push this back up. And of course, it's going to build and do all this jazz, and you should be able to refresh this in a second and get back. Yeah, so that's the deploy process. Again, if anybody has been going through this and has run into any issues, we can definitely take a look at it now and make sure you can get some Hello World deploy. If not, or if you're rewatching this, hopefully there's enough information here to walk through getting it deployed. That's the goal for this week. With that done, then you can just start to build out your app per usual, as you're used to. You can run this locally, shouldn't affect anything. Do your git push to push your commits to GitHub, and then when you're ready to actually deploy it, git push it to Heroku and see the thing go live. And that should be it.
Hey, Paul. So
Yeah.
I think I have it set up. I have the Gunicorn installed, and I have the proc file specifying where to find how to connect the app. But it's still that I'm still getting an application error when I check the Heroku logs. It's not very clear what's going on. You want me to share my screen?
Yeah, we can do that. All I'll say is with Python, do you have your requirements.txt?
I do, yeah.
Okay, well then, yeah, share your screen and we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Do I have to enable it? I haven't figured out how to set that by default. Yeah, all right, you should be good now. I want to default that so people can always
it says I cannot share screen while the other
all right, there you go.
person is sharing. Okay, let's see. Actually, I'm gonna have to hop on and hop off to grant access to the application to share screen.
Okay,
I will be right back.
must be that Mac. Chip, how was your setup going? I know last time we talked, you were going to take a stab at Heroku and all that.
I got like my account made and everything, but I went to like set my SSH keys, and I don't know if I either got lost along the way. I took a couple steps, like I got stuck, and then I went back to it like a day or two later, and yeah, I don't know. I still need to. I don't know. I haven't like watched any videos or anything yet on like actually. I've just been reading documentation or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I can't get it figured out within the next day or two, like I said, I mean, I have my files, but I'll have to transfer it. I don't know, I'll probably just rebuild it out or whatever when I actually like create my app, like through the CLI or whatever.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so I am getting an application error when I actually try to go to the app itself. I have, like I said, I do have my proc file. Let me go ahead and open that so you can see if it looks okay.
Yeah, it looks like Gunicorn saying the app failed to load.
So that's the proc file, but that looks
Get rid of the spacing between the two apps.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Okay. What about this one? That first one?
That should be fine.
Okay. Okay. Let me go ahead.
That there's a good chance that was your problem. I would try that.
Push. Yeah, so this reminds me of last week when I was deploying that application, like little errors here and there that just keep making it crash. So does it like install the requirements each time we make a deploy into the Heroku app? Like, does it on Heroku side of things, does it have to always like re-download all of the requirements for it?
Yeah. So every deploy and every dyno is immutable.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you deploy, it's going to go through that process.
Okay, cool. So it's working out on my end.
Cool.
Nice. How do I? There. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so that's something that trips up some people. Actually, like, might be a pro for y'all because you haven't done a whole lot of like FTPing and uploading files directly to a server and all that, because these days that's not really how you work with things. But historically, that's how everybody updated stuff to servers, or if there was something wrong, you'd like go into the server and change it. That was tough for a lot of people in the early days of like Heroku, because the initial thing was, let me go into the dyno or go into the server and see what's going on. And that's not how you do it here, because every time you do a deploy, it's immutable. So you can't, if you change something, because you can go into these servers, you can get into them. But if you do and you change something, it's going to get overwritten shortly thereafter, and definitely the next time you do a deploy. So that was kind of contrary and something that threw a lot of people for a loop when Heroku first got started. Today, it's a common pattern, so Heroku was actually onto something when they did that. But yeah, so that's just something to be aware about if you do ever run into issues or bugs with an application. What questions do folks have regarding this, or is everybody just kind of going to wait till this week to try and tackle this and get it installed and set up? My hope is to start. I mean, again, everybody's kind of going to develop their portfolios as they go. Hopefully, we can see next week how far, if anybody has a work in progress portfolio to show. That would be cool. If not, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the build process and the deploy process and pipelines and things like that to kind of take this one step further. Or answer any questions or walk through this again if anybody has that. But I want to hopefully answer all those today if anybody has it.
I'm chilling. I just need to, like I said, I have to figure out, iron out my pipeline or whatever to Heroku itself. Like I said, I have my account and everything. Like I have it like installed and everything, but it's I don't know. I need to like go back over and iron out exactly where I'm tripped up. SSH was. I tried to do like different sets or whatever, but like RSA and whatever the I don't know, a couple other ones. Was it like two or 255.339 or something like, I don't know, whatever the numbers are, but yeah, and I don't know, it wouldn't take. Just like kept throwing me an error that we only take these certain types of SSH keys. And I tried like 3, I think, different versions that they suggested, and it kept like throwing error. And I was like, oh, okay. But I don't know. I'll figure that out, and then get things kind of lined up.
Well, it looks like Ruthie's moving along well. Viva Mexico.
Hey Paul, I tried getting my domain linked to one of the application I deployed last week, but I couldn't figure it out. It's probably something super simple, but I verified my account, all of that, added my credit card, but yeah, still can't seem to do it.
I can go over that real quick. I think I'm sharing my right screen. If not, yell at me. Yeah, so if anyone's curious, that's under settings, domains. What you'll do is you'll add domain. If you have not added a credit card, it'll give you a prompt here to verify. That means you need to add a credit card. Once you've done that, you'll want to go to somewhere like anywhere. I have all my I have domains here. So grab your domains. Let me pull up this one. When you put in your domain, you're going to get something like this. That's going to pop up in this panel. But if you get out of that, it's also going to be available here. It's going to be that. So this is what it's going to give you once you enter a domain. What you're going to want to do is copy this value. That's your DNS target. And go log into your domain. And all right, pull this over here. I'm going to go to DNS and name servers. Depending on where you have your domain, it's going to vary. Can't tell you where that host or where that registrar is going to hide those settings. And domain.com, they're right there. You're going to go to DNS records, and then you're going to create a CNAME. So here, if I go add DNS record, again, the interfaces for domain names vary dramatically between providers. So you will find a place to add DNS records, and it's going to have a form with these fields, but it could look completely different. And what you'll do is the name is going to be so mine's at a subdomain. If it's not a subdomain, so in my case, I put like portfolio here. The type is a CNAME, and then the content was what I copied. And the TTL is the time to live. It's how often, if I was to change this value, anything that's cached it needs to like reread it every whatever I choose, so like every half hour, every hour, or whatever. And that's it. You can add it, and it'll look something like this. If you want the root of your domain, I think you're going to want, I don't know off the top of my head, because usually you would have an A record that would point to an IP address if you're using a root. They might make you use www. Because www here is technically a subdomain, even though everybody like knows the web as like www.whatever.com. Technically, when it comes to domains, that acts sort of like a subdomain. So that's one way you could do it. You could set your site up to always redirect like to the www version and to use that. And then you could do that. You could just use the CNAME and yada, yada, yada. Or I don't know if there's a way to not do that with Heroku. How did you set yours up, George?
So I'm looking for it right now. I have it with Google, and there's a place where I can. Yeah, I got the, what is it called? The DNS target copied, but I just don't know where to paste it.
Google Domains, is that what?
Yeah.
I have domains there too, so I can actually log in. And also reading, where did that go? So only the first three. So yeah, only CNAME, alias, and A names. A records are, yeah, they're car IP address. They do not have stable. So there is no way to like. So you have to use some domain name, which is probably going to be www. If you go to your domain DNS, custom resource records, that's what you're going to want right here at the bottom.
Okay.
And so you'd put www there and then change this to CNAME. This is your TTL. So I think if you hover this, it'll tell you, but it like, no, it doesn't. You can leave this at the 1H, that's just 1 hour. And then the domain name is going to be whatever you copied for this long thingamajiggy.
Okay. But you said change it to CNAME, right? Okay.
Yeah.
CNAME. Okay. It says it'll take effect in 48 hours.
Yeah, domain. So the way domain names work is the very, very, very quick of it is, or not like how they work, but the caching works is like, here's a bunch of servers, like there's an authority, there's multiple authorities. Basically, this is where you like register your thing. It's going to share it here, like here, this might send it to here, this might send it to here, then he might send it to like here and all this stuff. And eventually like some dude tries to visit your website over here and he might hit this server or he might hit this server, like who knows where it's going to get to do the DNS, the resolution, to turn that domain name ultimately into an IP address. So this is like flow of arrows is called propagation. And there's no, basically what that says is like in 48 hours, we would bet that like your domain name has made it to all of these different places out there in the world, so that if Joe over here goes to his browser and searches it, it's going to like find it. That TTL, a time to live, is what gets saved on each one of these things. It's like, oh, every hour I need to like make sure that that's still a thing, which means that like if I change something up here, it has to go through this propagation again, and it also has to expire the TTL before Joe's going to get the new result. Generally, this can be like as fast as like 5 minutes for you or less, or it can be like 12 hours. So that 48 is just like a worldwide like propagation time. So just a very quick overview of kind of how DNS works. Cool. So what else? People have questions, comments, concerns? Qualms, suggestions, something you wished you would see or have answered tonight that I completely overlooked or blew by? If not, that's all I had for tonight. Again, the plan is hopefully to have some folks demo next week their work in progress portfolios, and then we can take it in whatever direction we want to from there. Cool.
Were you wanting these projects, like, were you wanting to see these done in Python, or does it not matter? You just like happen to use that as an example?
Yeah, that's just my example. You can use whatever you want.
I figured as much. I was just like double checking. Cool. Yeah, no, I need to hop off here and do my schoolwork for the week real quick, and then that way I can like work on this later in the week. But yeah, I don't know if I hit it a third time or whatever and can't get it, I'll hit you up and see if we can't get things ironed out. But yeah, no, definitely excited to get started and at least I don't know, get something to show hopefully.
Cool. Yeah, if anybody has any questions throughout the week, hit me up in Discord. We can talk about it. Yeah, that's all we got for tonight. Looking forward to starting to see some of these portfolios come next week, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, me too, for sure. But yeah, y'all have a good night. I will see you later in the week. Later.
See everybody. We can continue the conversation in Discord if you want. If not, have a good night. The recording will be posted in the workshops channel. So.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. See you.
Thank you.